My world was built on straight lines and clean surfaces. As the office manager for Starlight Innovations, my job was order. I managed schedules, balanced budgets, and ensured the gleaming glass and steel facade of our corporate world remained spotless, both literally and figuratively. My apartment was a reflection of this minimalist, tidy, a place for everything and everything in its place. I had convinced myself this was happiness. It was control. It was safe. Then there was Leo. He was the night janitor, a ghost in our corporate machine. I'd only see him if I stayed late, a silent figure pushing a cart of rattling cleaning supplies down the long, empty hallways. He was tall and lean, with the kind of tired etched into his face that soap and water couldn't wash away. He never made eye contact, just a slight nod if our paths crossed. His gaze fixed on the floor he was about to polish to a mirror shine. He was, for all intents and purposes, invisible. And that's why, when he started becoming visible, it bothered me. It started with small things. The break room had a strict policy. All food in the communal fridge was to be labeled and was thrown out every Friday evening by the cleaning staff. It was a wasteful but ruthlessly efficient system. One Tuesday, I stayed late to finish a quarterly report and saw Leo from my office doorway. He was standing in front of the open fridge. He carefully, almost reverently, took out a half-eaten container of pasta salad someone had left, a Ziploc bag with 2 slices of pizza, and a Tupperware of leftover curry. He packed them neatly into a worn-out backpack that I'd never seen him carry before. My first thought, I'm ashamed to admit, was suspicion. Was he stealing? No, it was discarded food. But it was odd. It broke the pattern. A week later, I saw him again. This time he was on his phone, tucked away in the stairwell. His voice was a low, urgent murmur, but the acoustics of the empty building carried his words to my ears as I walked past. I know, Mija. I know it's late. Just a little longer. Did you finish your homework? Yes. Mrs. Gable has the key. Be good for her. I love you more, Mija. My daughter. A wave of something I couldn't name washed over me. It was a detail that didn't fit the sterile file I had mentally created for Leo, the janitor. The file contained his start date, his hourly wage, and his cleaning schedule. It did not contain a daughter. The suspicion in me, that cold, coiled thing that had kept me safe for so long, began to twist his words. Why was his daughter with a neighbor so late at night? Why did he sound so desperate? My mind, trained to find discrepancies in spreadsheets, started searching for them in his life. I began to notice more. The way his shoes were worn down at the heels. A tiny, almost imperceptible tremor in his hands when he lifted a heavy trash bag. The way he would sometimes just stop in the middle of a hallway, close his eyes, and take a deep, shuddering breath before continuing. The final piece of kindling for my terrible fire of suspicion came from the trash. I was the last one leaving, and as I dropped my coffee cup into the bin near the exit, I saw it. A child's drawing on a crumpled napkin. It was a wobbly crayon drawing of a stick figure with a huge smile, labeled puppy, holding hands with a smaller stick figure under a bright yellow sun. He must have cleared it from a desk and thrown it out, but then accidentally left it behind. I stared at it for a full minute. Puppy, Daddy. My orderly world felt like it had a loose thread, and I couldn't resist the urge to pull. That night, I did something I never thought I would do. Something that still makes a hot flush of shame creep up my neck when I think about it. I decided to follow him. I waited in my car in the darkened parking garage, my heart thumping a nervous rhythm against my ribs. I felt like a criminal, a creep. What was I even doing? But the questions in my head were too loud to ignore. When his old rattling sedan pulled out of the garage, I kept a safe distance and followed. He didn't go far. He drove to a part of town I only ever passed through on the freeway, a neighborhood of tired-looking apartment buildings and flickering streetlights. He parked in front of a squat, 3-story brick building where music from one apartment bled into the sounds of a shouting match from another. He got out, carrying his worn backpack, and disappeared inside. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, feeling foolish. What had I expected? A secret double life as a mastermind? He was a janitor who lived in a rundown apartment. That was it. I drove, home, my shame mixed with a strange sense of disappointment. But the image of that drawing, the sound of his voice saying "I love you more," wouldn't leave me. The next Friday, I did it again. This time was different. When he pulled up to the building, he didn't go straight in. He walked to the apartment on the ground floor, the one with the faded welcome mat, and knocked softly. The door opened, and a little girl, no older than 7 or 8, flew into his arms. "Puppy." He lifted her up as if she weighed nothing, burying his face in her dark hair. I was too far away to hear what they were saying, but I could see it. I could see the way his entire body, so tired and stooped at work, transformed. He stood up straighter. The exhaustion on his face was replaced by a light so pure and so bright it felt like I was staring into the sun. He hugged the older woman who had opened the door, Mrs. Gable, I presumed, and handed her a few folded bills before taking his daughter's hand. They didn't go into their own apartment right away. They sat on the front steps of the building, under the single buzzing porch light. He pulled the containers of food from his backpack. The pasta salad, a slice of pizza, the curry. He had a fork for her and a spoon for himself. They shared the food, sitting shoulder to shoulder, her little head resting against his arm. She would take a bite, then he would take a bite. They talked and laughed, their private little world illuminated in a small circle of light. I sat in my car, the engine off, and just watched. And the cold, suspicious part of me shattered. It didn't just crack. It disintegrated into dust. What was left was a hollow, aching cavity in my chest. I wasn't watching a potential thief or a deadbeat dad. I was watching a father who worked a thankless job all night, who was so poor that he brought home discarded office leftovers to share with his daughter for a late-night dinner on the steps of their apartment building. The drawing on the napkin flashed in my mind. The huge smile on the stick figure puppy. It wasn't just a child's doodle. It was the truth. Tears pricked my eyes. They weren't tears of pity. They were tears of shame. Deep, profound shame. My world of clean lines and balanced budgets felt so incredibly small and petty. My loneliness, which I had always worn like a stylish, minimalist coat, suddenly felt heavy and cold. He had nothing. And yet, sitting on those steps, sharing a cold slice of pizza, he had everything. I drove home that night and looked at my own apartment. The perfect beige walls, the single uncreased cushion on the sofa, the empty dining table that could seat 6. It had never felt so empty. My surveillance didn't stop, but its purpose changed entirely. The suspicion was gone, replaced by a quiet, burgeoning respect. I stopped thinking of it as following him and started thinking of it as learning. I wanted to understand. I started leaving things in the break room fridge on purpose. A whole roasted chicken from the gourmet market, accidentally left behind after a lunch meeting I'd invented. A large, family-sized lasagna with a note that said, "Too much. Please enjoy." I made sure to leave on Friday evenings, just to see the quiet gratitude on his face as he packed the items into his backpack. He never knew it was me. I was his anonymous benefactor, a small act of penance for my earlier sins. One Saturday, driven by a curiosity that now felt more like a pull, I found an excuse to be in his neighborhood. I parked a block away and walked past his building. I saw him outside, tinkering with an old bicycle. A boy from the neighborhood, maybe 12 years old, was watching him with rapt attention. Leo was patiently showing him how to fix a chain, his large, callous hands moving with a gentle precision. As I watched, an elderly woman came out of the building, struggling with 2 heavy grocery bags. Leo immediately wiped his hands on a rag and went to her. He took the bags from her, said something that made her smile, and carried them up the stairs for her. This became a pattern. Every time I found a reason to be nearby, I saw something similar. I saw him helping a young mother carry a stroller up the stairs. I saw him sharing his lunch, a simple sandwich, with a man who looked homeless and was resting on a nearby bench. I saw him using his own duct tape to patch up a torn screen on a neighbor's window. He was more than a janitor. He was more than a father. He was the quiet, beating heart of this entire, struggling community. He was the glue, the full revelation, the moment the title of hero was truly cemented in my mind, came on a cold night in November. I was working late again. A real deadline this time. The office was silent except for the hum of the computers and the distant rattle of Leo's cart. A freezing rain had started to fall, slicking the roads with a thin layer of ice. Around p.m., I heard his phone ring. This time he was closer, in the kitchenette, and I heard his side of the conversation clearly. "Maya, what's wrong, sweetie? You're coughing? A fever? Okay. Puppy's here. Don't be scared." "Yes. I'll be home soon. Just lie down. Did you take the medicine Mrs. Gable has?" "Okay. I know. I'll be there as fast as I can. I love you." He hung up, and for the first time, I heard a sound from him that wasn't a word. It was a choked-off sob, a sound of pure fear and helplessness. I saw him through the glass wall of my office. He leaned his head against the stainless steel refrigerator, his shoulders shaking, the strongest man I had ever seen, brought to his knees by a child's cough. He had to finish his shift. He couldn't afford to lose his job. He had to choose between his work and his sick daughter. My heart didn't just ache, it broke. I stood up, my own report completely forgotten. I walked out of my office and approached him. He heard my footsteps and straightened up immediately, wiping his eyes, his professional mask slipping back into place. "Miss Miller," he said, his voice thick. "I'm sorry, I was just—" "Leo," I said, my voice softer than I intended. "Go home." He stared at me, his eyes wide with confusion. "What? Your daughter needs you," I said gently. "Go home. I'll clock you out at the end of your shift. I'll tell them I needed you to do a special project in the executive suite. It's fine." He looked at me, his face a mixture of shock, suspicion, and desperate hope. I can't ask you to do that, ma'am. You're not asking. I'm telling you," I insisted. "Go. She needs her puppy." The word hung in the air between us. His eyes flickered, a flicker of understanding, of question. But the urgency of his daughter's illness won out. A single tear rolled down his cheek. "Thank you," he whispered. The words were so full of raw, unvarnished gratitude that I almost flinched. "Thank you, Miss Miller." He grabbed his backpack and was gone in a flash. I stood alone in the silent office, the weight of what I had done, what I had seen, settling over me. This was the hero. Not a man who ran into a burning building, but a man who fought a quiet, daily war against poverty, exhaustion, and fear, all for the love of his child. A man who still had enough strength left over to fix his neighbor's screen door. The next day, I came to work with a new kind of purpose. I went into our company's HR portal and looked up our corporate charity policies. We had a large, mostly unused community outreach budget. We had volunteer programs that no one ever signed up for. We had resources, gathering dust, that could change lives. That evening, when Leo came to work, he looked for me. He found me at my desk. He was holding a small, slightly wilted daisy in a plastic cup. "Miss Miller," he said, his voice hesitant. "My Maya, she's feeling much better today. She picked this for you, from Mrs. Gable's window box. She said to give it to the nice lady who sent her puppy home." I took the cup, my fingers brushing his. A jolt, small but definite, passed between us. "Thank you, Leo. I'm so glad she's okay," I said, and I meant it more than I had meant anything in a long time. He lingered for a moment. "Why did you do that for me?" he asked, his gaze direct for the first time. It was a deep, soulful brown, filled with a weariness that I was only now beginning to understand. I took a deep breath. I couldn't tell him the whole truth. I couldn't tell him I had stalked him and invaded his privacy. But I could give him a piece of it, because, I said, looking from him to the daisy, "I think good people deserve a break. And I think what you do, not just here, but everywhere, it matters." A slow understanding dawned in his eyes. He didn't know how I knew, but he seemed to understand that I did know. He gave me a small, tired smile. It was the most beautiful smile I had ever seen. That was the beginning. I started talking to him, not every night, but often. I'd ask about Maya. He'd show me her schoolwork, her drawings. He told me about her mother, who had passed away from an illness a few years back, leaving him to navigate the world alone. He told me about his neighbor's Mrs. Gable, who was like a grandmother to Maya, the teenage boy, Marcus, whose father had kicked him out, the elderly Mr. Henderson, who was too proud to ask for help with his groceries. As he talked, I started to formulate a plan. One evening, I asked him to stay for a few minutes after he clocked out. I led him to one of the empty conference rooms. On the table, I had laid out a proposal. "Leo," I said, my heart pounding, "our company has a community outreach program. It's mostly for show, but the money is real. I've been thinking, what if we made it real?" He looked at the papers confused. "I'm talking about a food pantry," I explained, my words stumbling out. "A real one. We could use the old storage room on the ground floor. The company would stock it. And a tutoring program for the kids in your building. We have dozens of engineers and analysts here who would love to volunteer an hour a week. A handyman service for small repairs, for people like Mr. Henderson. The company would pay for the supplies." I looked at him. My breath held. "What you're doing on your own. It's incredible. You're a one-man support system. But you don't have to do it alone. We can help." He sank into one of the plush conference room chairs, staring at the proposal I'd written. He picked it up, his hands, the same hands that pushed a broom and fixed a bicycle chain, trembling slightly as he read. He read about the budget I had secured, the volunteer sign-up sheets I had already designed, the space I had already requested. When he looked up, his eyes were shining with unshed tears. "You did all this?" he asked, his voice cracking. "We did this," I corrected him gently. "I just typed it up. This is all you." I just gave it a name. And so, the Starlight Community Project was born. It started small. I put up the sign-up sheets, and to my surprise, people signed up. Young programmers, tired of staring at code, volunteered to tutor math. Marketing executives offered to help with resumes. A whole team from accounting organized the first official food drive. Leo was the heart of it all. He wasn't the janitor anymore. He was the project coordinator. He knew everyone. He knew what they needed. And he knew how to help without making anyone feel small. I watched him, not from the shadows of my car, but from beside him, as he handed a box of fresh food to a young family, his face beaming. Our late-night talks changed. We talked about logistics for the project, but we also talked about our lives. I told him about my sterile apartment and my even more sterile past relationship that had taught me to value control over connection. He told me about his dreams for Maya, for her to go to college, to have a life bigger than the one he could provide. One evening, we were in the newly converted pantry, stacking cans of soup. The work was done, but neither of us made a move to leave. "You know," he said, breaking the comfortable silence, "I never understood you, Miss Miller." "Clara," I said softly. "Please, call me Clara." He smiled. "Clara, I always saw you up in your glass office, so perfect. Everything in its place. I thought you were from a different planet." I let out a short, sharp laugh. "Believe me, I'm not. My life wasn't perfect, Leo. It was just empty. All those clean surfaces. There was no one to mess them up." He looked at me, his gaze so full of warmth and understanding it made my breath catch. "Well," he said, his voice low, "it's a little messy now." He gestured around the pantry, at the boxes and the bags and the happy chaos of it all. But he was looking at me, and I knew he wasn't just talking about the room. He was talking about my life, about his, about this strange, beautiful, messy thing we had built together. He took a small step closer. "Clara," he said again, testing the name on his tongue. "Thank you for seeing me." "Thank you," I whispered back, my heart full to bursting. "For letting me see you." He reached out and gently tucked a stray strand of hair behind my ear. His touch was electric, a jolt of pure, unadulterated life. And in that moment, standing in a converted storage room that smelled of cardboard and canned peas, surrounded by the evidence of 100 small acts of kindness, I felt more at home than I ever had in my own pristine apartment. My world is still full of lines, but they're no longer straight. They are the messy, beautiful, intersecting lines of human connection. They are the lines of laughter on Maya's face when I help her with her reading. They are the lines of gratitude on Mrs. Gable's face when we bring her a hot meal. They are the lines of exhaustion and joy on Leo's face at the end of a long day. He is still a janitor. He is still a single dad. But I know the truth. I know that in the quiet hours of the night, long after the rest of the world has gone to sleep, heroes are still at work. Sometimes they carry a broom, and sometimes, if you're very, very lucky, you get to stand beside them and help them carry the load.